Hello, and welcome to Political Science 101. We are on Chapter 14, the Judiciary. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that you know the Supreme Court justices and the issues at hand that include those justices. So first I'm going to show you this screen. And here are the 9 Supreme Court justices. There is a problem though, and I'm wondering if you know what it is. We have Ruth Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia, Elena Kagan, Clarence Thomas, Sonia Sotomayor, Samuel Alito Jr., Anthony Kennedy, John Roberts Jr., and Stephen Breyer. But something happened in February of 2016. Antonin Scalia died. So we only have 8 Supreme Court justices. So there's a big question here as to what will happen with his empty position. Because Obama's terms are coming to an end as a president, he did not take the risk of having a hearing that could be blocked. So the next president, which is President-elect Trump, will be needing to nominate a Supreme Court justice, and that will have to be passed by the Senate hearings, unless they pass it unanimously, not unanimously, but without hearings. Okay, so that is taken care of. I just wanted you to know who they were and have a picture of them. Okay, and we are on chapter 14. All right. Okay, let's see. I'm going to move this back a little bit. All right, so founders of the American Republic were a little worried about popular control over the government could lead to mob rule, and that's why judges, that third legislative branch, which is the judicial branch, was implemented. Now, I love on your opening page how it talks about, the people should rule, judges can be insulated from politics, governors often appoint judges, do appointing when judges aren't elected. And then you have the courts must be insulated from popular pressure. Some people believe judicial elections believe that they allow too much opportunity for popular panics and prejudices to influence the process. And this lock-em-up attitude is really a huge problem. There's a huge jail issue in the United States that is not actually a problem in other European countries that are very much similar, like Japan or England. I believe that we have either 40 or 60% of the entire world population in jail. So there are some issues. A judge might come through and a judge might say, hey, I'm going to be tough on crime, and then he puts people in jail who really, for a long amount of time, that really shouldn't be there. And once you put someone in jail, jail changes people, and in a very, very difficult sociological way, in a way that sometimes they cannot come back and be put back in mainstream society. Not because they were such bad, terrible criminals when they first went in, but because once you're in jail, the hierarchy, the control, there's a different society, and it's really very scary if you begin looking at especially like poverty and jail and that sort of thing. So this is a really big question in America. There's too many. We have more people in jail than anyone else in the world, and it's not because our crime is down. It's because the system is broken. Okay. Judiciary are the courts, one of the 3 branches of government. Lots of terms: common law, precedent, stare decisis, to stand on decided cases where, there are court cases that are decided because of previous cases, and we all, know about that because we've watched Law and Order. tons, right? And we've learned a lot. For example, one of those, well, here's a different one. It's called a departure from precedent, and that is Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. Segregation was acceptable. It was passed by the Supreme Court previously, and then Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka was flipped and said no more. There is no separate but equal. Really interesting case. And I believe it says in your book that Eisenhower did not know that Judge Warren was going to change his opinion when he heard it. He didn't think that would happen because he appointed Warren, but actually Warren did change his mind, and he really stood up for racial equality and no more segregation. All right. Constitutional law. You have to understand that not only is there a U.S. Constitution, but there also is a Constitution for every single state. So that kind of gets a little complicated. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Okay, and I think we know that. Any law that violates the Constitution is invalid and unenforceable. Okay. Administration, I can't talk. Administrative law, case law, civil law, criminal law. Criminal law has to do with the wrongs committed against the public as a whole, criminal acts. Jurisdiction is geographic area. Do you have the right or the power to exercise the court's power in certain areas? Okay, what else? Right. Contempt of court. Of course, we've heard this before. A ruling that a person has disobeyed a court order and has shown disrespect to the court or to a judicial proceeding. This is really interesting. I believe it's page 319. You have 94 judicial districts. It shows their geographical boundaries. You have appellate courts, and that's really an interesting definition. So I encourage you to make sure you read these. A court having appellate jurisdiction in an appellate court normally does not hear evidence or testimony, but reviews the transcripts of the trial court's proceedings, other records relating to the case, the attorney's arguments as to why the trial court's decision should or should not stand. Okay. One thing I really want to point out to you that is super awesome Ohio history, since I am based in Cincinnati, Ohio, Northern Kentucky area. McKinley was a president. Okay. Oh, I'm saying the wrong person, aren't I? Shoot. It's not McKinley. McKinley was a president. I believe it was Taft. Oh, I need to double check this. Taft was a president, and he was also a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and he hated being president. It just really wasn't his thing. He really liked being a Supreme Court justice way better. So that's just a little piece of Ohio history. I believe McKinley was from Ohio too, but not from Cincinnati. Okay, there are 9 chief justices. We just talked about this. 1 died, okay? Scalia was actually appointed by Reagan, okay? He was considered conservative. There are 9 Supreme Court justices. There are 4 that are considered conservative, and there are 4 that are considered liberal. But sometimes they swing back and forth, okay? All right. What else? Which cases reach the Supreme Court? There is no absolute right to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. You have to be chosen. Not just anybody gets to do it. And there are several ones that 2013-14 that came about. Hobby Lobby and the birth control issue. Different, it says it in your book. They have an oral argument and also legal briefs. The courts, so like other appellate courts, the U.S. Supreme Court normally does not hear any evidence. A court's decision in a particular case is based on written record of a case and the written arguments or legal briefs. The court's decision in a particular case is based on the written record of the case and written arguments. I just said that. The attorneys also present oral arguments, spoken arguments presented in person rather than paper to the court. Okay. Reaching an opinion. They have conferences. The justices get together. You have often one or more justices who agree with the court's decision, do so for reasons different from the outline of the majority opinion. These justices may write a concurring opinion. Justices who disagree write dissenting opinions. So they do a lot of writing explaining why they decided what they decided. And you can read those. All right. State courts are elected. Federal judges, Supreme Court justices, they are appointed. And you also have governors that also can appoint different judges as well. Nomination process. The president receives suggestions and recommendations as to potential nominees. I love the chart on page 323. It talks about how many of them were in private practice, how many of them were state judges, federal judges, U.S. attorney, senator, state governors at one time. How many of them were Protestant? 83. How many of them were Roman Catholic? 14. How many were Jewish? 7. How many of them were Unitarian? 7. No religious affiliation? 1. Under 40? 5. 41 to 50, 33, 51 to 60, 60 of them, 61 to 70, 14. Okay. Political party affiliation, Federalist, 13. Jefferson Republican, 7. Whig, 1. Democrat, 46. Republican, 44. Independent, 1. Education, college graduate, 96. Not a college graduate, 16. Male, 108. Female, 4. Wow. We need some gender equality here. Race, white, not Hispanic, 109. African American, 2. Okay, if we have huge amounts of African Americans and Hispanics in the jail system, I think we need more judges. I'm sorry, I just am upset and needed to say that out loud. Hispanic, 1. Okay. All right, that just looks a little shady. Okay. Has partisanship. It should be no surprise that partisanship is a problem. And this is where it talks about Dwight D. Eisenhower, for example, had no idea he appointed Chief Justice Earl Warren, and world would seek to overturn segregation. Wow. Okay. A Court of Appeals appoints the U.S. Court of Appeals, also has a lasting impact. Court of Appeals sees 60,000 court cases per year. Okay. Sonia Sotomayor is the first Hispanic or Latina Supreme Court justice that has ever been appointed. Really very cool. Under President Obama, it talks about different women, first black or second black man that was ever appointed as well. Confirmation, rejection by the Senate. Sometimes they're rejected. And there wasn't this polarization before. And they really kind of hone in on where that polarization happened, this infighting, where they throw fits, the parties throw fits about who's going to be selected. And it began with Robert Bork, who faced hostile questioning when Reagan actually, let's see, the Senate rejected only 3 court nominees from 1893 to 1968. From 1968 to 1986, however, 2 presidential nominees to the highest court were rejected, and 2 more nominations both by President Reagan failed in 1987. Bork was one of them. Now, I remember George H.W. Bush when he put in Clarence Thomas's name. There was a huge scandal of sexual harassment allegations by Anita Hill. I remember that. That was very contentious. I was very, very, very young, so I didn't really understand what was happening. Very interesting. Let's see.